meeting these people showed me that the way of life that I knew and the way of moving through the world that I was familiar with was not the only way. There are more options. And as I looked around and saw all of these people living their lives with joy and with grace and with ease, feeling this sense of aliveness, I realized that I too could surrender to this new feeling and know that I wasn't alone, to know that success leaves clues. And as I look around and people are happy and they're doing something that I also enjoy doing, it's a sign.
Many blessings. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Yoga Revealed podcast. Super excited to have the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into your path. But first, I want to have the opportunity to introduce you to our wonderful audience. This is the absolutely magnetic Tony. He is one of the most heartfelt and incredible satsang and yoga teachers that I've ever had the opportunity of practicing with. And we just actually completed our 300-hour yoga teacher training here at Love and All Is Coming in Rishikesh, India. And I just wanted to say that it is an absolute honor to have the opportunity to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a dream to have had the opportunity to spend this time with you. I've heard about you and known you and kind of met you once upon a time, a long time ago. So it's cool to have had this really condensed and like intense, beautiful month together. So it's been a dream for me too.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy that, like literally like when you said, you're like, I think I've met you before. And I was like literally rewound all the way back to New York at the Jared studio. What was Lighthouse?
Lighthouse.
Yeah. Super gorgeous studio. And I remember just going in there and just seeing all these incredible practitioners just like doing things that at the time I was like blown away. And now to have the opportunity to be here, and this is now my third 300-hour teacher training that I've done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Amazing. I did one with Noah Maze, another one with Johnny Kest, and now this one with Love and All Is Coming.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
cool.
Been a wonderful third time's a charm. Definitely the most heart-opening experience of all of my trainings thus far. And I really would love to talk a little bit about where your yoga journey first began.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, this story I love to share. It's the most important story that I share in my life, probably. And I share this with all of my students whenever I teach at a new training or even just have an online training or have one-on-ones, because to me, this access point is the most potent teaching or lesson that I have in yoga and also in life. So when I was 22, 23, I lost my mom to suicide. She had a drinking problem throughout the course of my life due to a lot of terrible things that happened in her life, sexual abuse and things like this. And I grew up as an only child with her, and my entire life I kind of felt like she was obviously my mom and we had an amazing relationship. She was a really cool person, but we almost felt more like friends. And so it was always just her and I. My parents got divorced when I was a young kid, maybe like a year old. And so I grew up with her primarily, and I was in the thick of it with her all the time, with her struggles, with her ups and her downs. And she always had this real willingness to keep trying and keep trying to sort of like pull her life together and get back on track. And she did everything that she could, really. She did AA and the 12-step program, and she really used all of the tools that she had, but she didn't have the tools that we have, unfortunately. And she came to New York for my graduation from college, and naively I said to her, if you come, you can't drink. You have to be sober, and that's impossible for someone who has a drinking problem, unless they've gotten to a point where they can really deal with it in that type of way. So she came, she drank, and at that point in time, I felt like I needed to set a boundary, and I said, "You've got to go." And I booked her on the next flight home to Utah, And we had a really beautiful, heartfelt last night together. And I told her, listen, if you want to drink, I'll go with you and we'll just sit together and you can drink and you can do whatever you want. And we can be in an honest and open space together, full of acceptance. And then when you get home, just know that I will always love you, but I need you to get sober. And when you have 30 days sober, we can continue our relationship and we can start talking again. And I hope that we can have a new version of our relationship. So she got home and she checked herself into rehab. She got 30 days sober. We started talking again and it was amazing. But unfortunately, she couldn't nip it in the bud. And I know that she relapsed and I think that she felt so much shame from that. And she took her own life and it was devastating for me. And it really just turned my whole world upside down. I felt in some capacity guilt, of course, for setting the boundary. But then I also felt, as I checked in with myself, I knew my own truth and I knew what I needed to do for myself. And I know that she respected me for holding the high vision for her and also for myself. Mm-hmm. So when she died, I had no idea how to handle all of the emotions that I was feeling and experiencing. And I started seeing a therapist, and that therapist suggested that I start going to yoga. Wow. And I was living across the street from Yoga to the People in New York City on St. Mark's Place. So I just started going there, and I went every single day. And then I went back to the therapist, and I said, okay, I did it. I've been practicing every day, and I feel something shifting, even after just 1 week. And she was like, great, keep going. And then I kept going and kept going and kept going. And then I met a bunch of people. I met Jared McCann, I met Talia, and my whole life really turned in a completely different direction because I too was also on a path to nowhere. You know, I was partying.
How old were you? At
22. I was 22.
Yeah, so like fresh out of college.
Out of college, yeah. I was going out a lot in New York, partying, all sorts of things. But that was the catalyst. That was what changed my life. And it's really informed my pedagogy as a teacher. And I feel so grateful for that pain. And I know that pain is the wisdom that I'm able to share with people.
Yeah. And it's being able to actually transmute that pain and turn it into fuel for the fire rather than allowing it to be something that actually pushes you into the point where you actually burn out.
Totally.
And so I wanted to ask, in those first initial stages of going to yoga every single day, like, what were you feeling? What were some of the, thoughts that were coming up, and what kept you actually consistent with that practice?
Great question. In the beginning, I think it was a volcano, an eruption of emotion that was brewing inside of me that was just begging to come out. I remember being at those Yoga to the People classes, and it was this room packed full of people, and the sequence was like a real sort of power vinyasa class. And I would be sweating, dripping in sweat and crying, dripping tears out of my eyes. Just everything was wet. And I was crying and sweating and breathing, and the emotions were moving through me. But I wasn't conscious of what was happening, but I could feel the yoga working. It was just doing its job, basically. And I was allowing myself to be there. And when I would exit the building on St. Mark's Place in New York, I would walk down the street. It's like so crazy. It's so crazy to think back on this time because it's been a long time since I've really recounted these details. And just like everything was so much more vivid. The trees, like I felt alive. Yeah. I felt alive. I could feel the prana flowing through my body, and it is still for me every time I practice, every day I do my practice, a miracle, a total, like, wow, holy moly, grace of God.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a download every time, and it's not lost on me, even still. But tracing the story back to that moment is really special, especially remembering the sight and the feeling and the touch and the smells of everything kind of enlivening my presence, because I felt so, with the death of my mom, I also felt kind of dead inside. Mm-hmm. There was a death that happened, and a reckoning with the temporary quality of this human form, which I didn't understand at that point. And being able to feel alive in a way that was not, it was a sensory experience, but it wasn't of this body. It wasn't of this experience. It was so much more expansive than that. And I think that feeling and that sensibility and that little bija, that little seed of knowledge that was planted, kept me coming back. There was no not knowing, after the wisdom drops, it's like, wait, I can't go back again. This is my new way of being. This is the truth of who I am.
That's beautiful that you really were able to stick with that consistency, and that you could also feel that truth was resonant within your heart. And I feel that for so many practitioners, especially starting out, like, you are so fresh and new that when you step into that room, it's like a whole entire new perspective of how you're able to introspect and actually view yourself. And I feel that when you have that perspective, that's when the real beauty of life begins to grow. And so I wanted to hear as well, what were some of the main components about the community that was at Yoga to the People? And because I mean, you told me that you met Talia and you met Jared. What were some of the dynamics then? And what do you remember as far as being a fresh practitioner and having the opportunity to meet other practitioners who were inspiring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it too, is that I was able to connect with people that were of this same new mindset that I was sort of adjusting and reorienting my brain to. My entire life as a kid, I was always deeply spiritual, and I as a kid, I loved anything having to do with the celestial elements, sun, moon, stars. My whole room had sun, moon, and stars everywhere. So I was really curious about the existence of our nature, and then meeting people with the same sort of curiosity and on this quest for wisdom and knowledge of the self with capital S was enthralling to me. I actually met Jared at a store. We were both working at a retail store in Soho called Marni, a fancy Italian brand. And I didn't meet him at Yoga to the People. I started going to Yoga to the People first, and then I met him shortly after. And then he introduced me to other types of yoga, like Bikram and Dharma Mitra and Ashtanga. And then he got full into the fold with Yoga to the People, and that's when we met Talia. And Rose Aaron was a Dharma person, so I've known her since the very beginning of my practice. And she's a dear friend and teacher of mine as well, also faculty on this program.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Amazing yogi. But yeah, meeting these people showed me that the way of life that I knew and the way of moving through the world that I was familiar with was not the only way. There are more options. And as I looked around and saw all of these people living their lives with joy and with grace and with ease, feeling this sense of aliveness, I realized that I too could surrender to this new feeling and know that I wasn't alone, to know that success leaves clues. And as I look around and people are happy and they're doing something that I also enjoy doing, it's a sign. Oh wow, like I can also live in my truth and know that there are other options out there. I don't have to subscribe to the norm, the 9 to 5, the social construct that many people, myself included, have fallen sort of victim to at some point in their life, thinking I have to do this in this order, in this way. It was nice to have that challenged and for me to be able to know that I can live my dharma and live the true essence of my life. And the community element was very important. It was a really important part of that.
And I feel like the community element right here at Love and All in Covenant, like it's so palpable to like step into the room with 51 other practitioners and just feel that energy, that vibrance. And I want to speak to, how your community evolved, because you went from, going to Lighthouse, and then I'm sure that you did a number of different teacher trainings, and then you decided to start teaching. Like, what was your path from that point that you were, feeling this sensation, you were feeling this community, then to becoming an actual teacher?
Yeah, so it was really interesting how it happened. So Jared and I met, and for those of you who don't know, Jared McCann, he's also a great yoga teacher. He and I met, and we started dating, and he wasn't a yoga teacher yet, but he was really deep into the yoga world. And then he did his first training, and he really wanted to open a studio. And actually before that, Yoga to the People were offering a hot yoga training, and because of his dedicated practice, they asked him to teach on it, and he invited me to participate. I don't even know if maybe I didn't even have to pay because I was dating him. So I was like, okay, sure, why not?
Part of the family.
And this is really my yoga journey. I didn't have a lot of direction or vision for my life or what I wanted, but I had a dedicated practice. And because of the dedicated practice, things kept coming to me. I wasn't ever deciding, I need to do this, I want to do this, but I kept getting handed teacher trainings kind of for free. I don't know that I ever paid for a teacher training, actually.
Wow.
And I've done a lot of them, but they just keep being gifted to me. And I don't think that it's an accident. I think that it's my teacher, Naveen Mashan, the creator of Katona Yoga, says the drishti of joy is being in the right place at the right time. And I think that
the drishti of joy.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That is a good one.
The drishti of joy is being in the right place at the right time. And I'm not in the right place at the right time on accident. That's technique, right? That's because I did my practice. And
preparation meets opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did some trainings. I did this hot yoga teacher training. I had no intention of teaching. I really didn't feel like I was worthy of it. And then Yoga to the People hired me to teach, and they invited me to teach the first public class from the training. And I thought to myself, wow, what is going on here? This is so peculiar. And then Jared and I opened Lighthouse together. So I built the studio and really sort of built the community in a big way. And he built the teaching and the offering. And we opened with some teacher trainings. And I participated in the teacher trainings at our school. And then I really, with him, built the community of Lighthouse in a pretty special way. And then we decided to go our separate ways, Jared and I, and I began dating my husband now shortly after, and he is also a yoga teacher who has a yoga school called the Sacred Fig, and he offers a bunch of trainings as well. So I've been sort of folded into the Sacred Fig community in another really special way, which changed the trajectory of my life. And that's under the umbrella of the Sacred Fig is really where I developed the satsang practice that I've been teaching all of you. And then Talia called me one day out of the blue. We hadn't been chatting a lot, maybe peripherally on Instagram, but not a lot. And she said, I would love for you to lead trainings with me. Would you be open to that? And I was just like, sure. So I think coming from a place of yes has been a cornerstone in the path of yoga and teaching for me. It's been scary. It's obviously always scary stepping outside of the comfort zone and into the challenge zone, but saying yes is definitely a major affirmation for me in my life, because I don't always have the confidence or the vision to know where I'm going, but I do know that when I'm asked something by someone that I really love and respect, the answer is always yes. And that positions me in the right place at the right time.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah.
In the drishti of joy.
In the drishti of joy. It's good. It's a good place.
That's a blessing. And I feel like your journey has been so guided by incredible teachers who believe in you. So I wanted to ask, what do you believe are some of the qualities of some of the most incredible teachers that you've had the opportunity of practicing with and learning from?
I think going back to this idea that something that I mentioned earlier, success leaves clues. So when I look around and I look at my teachers and I examine their qualities, and I think, and more than think, really feel at the center of my own heart what it is that I love and admire about them. And I know that if I can tap into that essence that I feel around them, I know that that is what I'll be able to receive from them. And, like Rose Aaron has this gorgeous, subtle sense of humor, which is quite sneaky and cheeky, but she's also incredibly devoted to knowledge and to bhakti. So she has both this incredible cerebral and intellectual knowledge, but also a deep devotion and dedication to the heart space. And so does Talia.
And so do you.
And so do I. Same attract same, I guess. Yeah. And Naveen, my teacher Naveen, the creator of Katona Yoga, is also that way. She's so generous. She invites her students over to her home. She serves them tea, and we go on walks through her garden, and she shows us all of the new plants that she's planting, and we light a fire and we sit around and we talk about yoga, and then she cooks us a meal, and we have this beautiful moment of deep connection where we can really absorb the knowledge that she's sharing with us, but in a way that feels so deeply personal and loving, almost like a mom type of character. And it's really sweet to receive that transmission from her. And I also look at her life and her home, and everything's gorgeous and well kept. And that's because she has set herself up well. The foundation is set up well, and she has nice techniques. And these techniques allow her to have a life that is both simple and beautiful. And my partner is also a really cool example of someone who is incredibly generous and exudes love and joy and outward in every direction at all times. Naveen Mishan actually introduced us, and when she was talking about Anton, she said, Anton, I send my students to go find him so that they find their joy. And
wow.
he really gives everything that he has to people in a selfless way. He has a lot of energy and a lot of vision and a lot of drive, and he loves seeing others succeed. So my success as a teacher is also largely from having a partner which is so supportive and elevating. He's really been a big cheerleader for me, and it's helped me a lot.
Well, it's great to have those type of people to constantly uplift you and
Yeah.
to keep you feeling that sense of not only just like inspiration, but also that sense of a clear direction towards like you can go this way, and let's reaffirm the skills that you're showing that you're most interested in to help you on that path. And I feel that that's really powerful. One thing that I definitely would love to come back to is you mentioned that you're now teaching this satsang, this practice of, I mean, I'll let you actually define it even more, because in my experience, it's a true practice of devotion, a true practice of really tapping into a deeper awareness of the subtle nature of what it means to be devoted to this practice of yoga. And so I would love to hear, and I'm sure the listeners would love to hear a little bit more about satsang.
Cool. Yeah, satsang is a practice that I am so excited to be sharing on this level. I've been teaching this practice now for about 5 or 6 years, and it was developed over probably the past 15 years based off of my own practice. I have a one-on-one relationship with a teacher named Gauri, who comes from Amma's ashram. And Amma, for those of you who don't know, is the hugging saint. And her school and her method is also all about love and this beautiful darshan, this transmission of love that comes from a hug. And I began receiving 40-day mantra sadhanas from this woman, Gauri, who I still speak to every 40 days. And
what does that look like for people who are not perhaps, aware of a mantra, or, what it means to have like a 40-day sadhana of a mantra? Like, what does that look like?
So basically, we have calls every 40 days, and she also does Jyotish astrology. So she looks at my astrological chart. We talk a lot about what's going on in my life, blockages that I feel and experience, or opportunities that I would like to open myself up to. And based off of what we talk about, she gives me a set of mantras that I do for 40 days every day, no skipping. And after the 40 days, I really sort of have, I have a handle on the vibration of that mantra, and I've absorbed it. And that mantra practice, its benefits come in waves for up to 6 months to a year. And then on the 40-day mark, I speak to her again on Zoom, and then we have that whole conversation again, and she gives me a new set of practices.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty epic.
It's epic. And that's the foundation of my sadhana, and that was really the first step in creating satsang, is developing a really strong personal practice myself.
And how long have you been actually practicing this sadhana? I mean, like, and over like the first few months, were you able to just, do 40 days of just
time.
Bam, like you're in it?
Yeah. No. It took time. It took a lot of time to develop this consistency, and I kept going. And I think the biggest mistake is for people to get discouraged if they don't maintain the consistency, because it is like a water changes a stone. It's with consistency over time, but it might not be consistent at first, and that's okay. And what was the other part of your question?
Just like so you developed this consistency, and then in developing this consistency, it led to you actually creating this practice of satsang?
Yeah, so the mantra was the baseline, and I had been doing these one-on-ones with her. Now it has to have been over a decade. Wow. I've been speaking to her every 40 days and growing my repertoire of mantras that I have worked with. And that was the baseline. And then I somewhat simultaneously began doing TM and Vedic meditation. So those two became kind of the first part of the satsang creation. And then I began getting really into Kriya work and pranayama. And a lot of the Kriya and the pranayama work comes from Katona. And I've learned a lot of this from Naveen, along with the metaphor that I weave in. So satsang is a combination of japa mantra, Vedic meditation, Kriya work, and pranayama. mixed with metaphor and poetry and anything else that chooses to come out of me in this given moment. And it was piecemeal at first. So I had the mantra and I had the Vedic, and then I began dabbling in Kriya and pranayama and all of these other elements. And then it wasn't until the Sacred Fig, my husband's yoga school, was putting on a training in Portugal, and his meditation teacher couldn't come. And I, of course, was there with him. He knew that I had had this dedicated meditation practice for so many years. He asked me if I would oversee meditation and satsang and philosophy on his trainings. And he said, I'd like a mix of guided meditation and, some pranayama and mantra and Vedic. And so based off of what he said, I just kind of put all of the things together that I had been doing over the years. And what I was most uncomfortable with was this idea of guided meditation, because I had never done guided meditations and I didn't understand them. And now it's so funny to imagine not braiding that into it, because it really kind of binds everything together. And because of saying yes to that opportunity, satsang was born, or my particular flavor of satsang that I've been teaching all of you.
Can you tell us like a little metaphor that perhaps you've given in one of our satsangs?
Oh yeah, sure. So I take these metaphors from Katona, so these are Naveens, and I love integrating them because I think that it's so potent and present. So I always talk about becoming round, spherical, and buoyant, so that when we fall down, we don't break, we bounce back. And part of becoming spherical and round and buoyant is knowing where I am in time and space. So I always know that fire rises from below, grace is given from above, my past is behind me, and my potential is in front of me. And I remain in the center, mediating, meditating, and modulating on all of the polarities.
I'm feeling even more round.
Yes.
And tell us about these kriyas, because I feel like, there's a lot of listeners who I'm sure have heard about japa mantra and, like going through bead by bead and having an actual mantra that's a Sanskrit word. But, like, what is a kriya and what defines a kriya?
Great question. Yeah, kriya means action, and kriya and karma are more or less the same meaning, action and action, with the same root word, kr, but they are different. So a kriya, in the way that I understand it, is an action that neutralizes karma and doesn't create new karma, but neutralizes. And these are usually physical actions. And of course, the ancient yogis did many different cleansing kriyas. These are cleansing exercises, like Nauli Kriya, or
wave the belly.
The basti, the drinking the salt water, or the enemas, or the cleaning the nose, or the tongue scraping. These are also kriyas. But the kriyas that I do in satsang are usually breath, mantra, and action based. So we have three components: using the breath, using a physical action, and also oftentimes using a mantra. The three are braided together to combine this cleansing exercise. And then I love to sync the breath up to the beat of music and create a really interesting, transcendental, transformational moment in time. I feel like using the music and the beat really facilitates the breath.
I feel like, honestly, satsangs are really spiritual parties.
Yeah, they are.
Like, if someone were able to, put on their spirit visors and, see what's going on, we're just all there, just like, woo!
Yeah.
Full on. And it's so uplifting. So uplifting. Like, there's, the days where we're feeling like sluggish and we're going through our Sanskrit studies, and then all of a sudden you come in and you just break it up with a little bit of magic. And I must say that the satsang practice is definitely something that will stick with me as something that I want to continue learning, because it's potent. It's potent to see how quickly you can change the vibration of a space with these simple actions.
Definitely. And that's why I love it. It's so empowering to be able to challenge my negative thoughts and challenge my low energy and challenge that sluggishness by taking action and knowing that I have the power. I'm empowered. That this is yoga, right? Developing cities, developing the essence of self-realization is knowing that I can be powerful because I can determine my own circumstances. I can shift the tide of my experience at any point in time by changing the way that I breathe and move and think. And these practices, these tools and techniques can really ignite a shift in people, and they have in me, and that's why I love sharing them.
That's beautiful. And so I want to hear a little bit more about how our listeners out there can perhaps cultivate their own satsang practice at home. And what does that look like? Is it like, like something where maybe you would just give them a few steps to practice, like a 20-minute, a 30-minute, or a 40-minute practice? Like if they're brand new to, say, Kriya and mantra, like what would be some steps to kind of get them into the door?
Great. My first tip is to start off small. So do just a little bit, but do it every day. So choose something that you can do every single day, maybe even 1 minute of Kapalabhati, arms overhead in a V position, extend the thumbs, and do Kapalabhati for 1 minute. Set a timer, maybe find a song that you love. Everything's a little bit better with music.
Yeah.
Everything's a little bit better with a friend, with a smile. So maybe 1 minute of Kapalabhati is a great start. And then in terms of mantra, I've received all of my mantra from my teacher, and I have continued that lineage with my students. So I now see somewhere between 40 and 60 students once a month. And I speak to them about what's going on in their lives. And then I give them a set, basically their personal satsang, their personal sadhana, which involves mantra, kriya, pranayama, meditation. And that's a sort of perfectly curated practice. And then I hold their hand through the process throughout the month. And it's really nice to have that accountability. At least that was how I built my practice, is having the accountability of a teacher to hold my hand and see me through it, because it is hard at first. But the main little nugget of wisdom is to start off slow and short, and then gradually, with the consistency, build up to maybe increasing things a little bit. But morning time is the best. No phone use. Right when you wake up. No, Instagram or any of that. And then I also love to add a sense of devotion to my practice. So even something as simple as lighting an incense or a candle is really helpful to shift the energetics of the day, so that I can position my mind and my spirit into a place of devotion, doing something very special and deeply divine. This is not just brushing my teeth. This is me connecting to God. And to consider the gorgeous gravity of that for a moment, like, whoa, this is a moment for me to connect to God, to connect to my inner friendliness toward myself, to become my own best friend. And I always tell people, if they don't believe in God, just think of the sun or think of their mother. There's always something that was here before us that's giving us life or giving us energy. And that essence, or that being, whatever it is, wherever it is something so stunning, so gorgeous to connect with. So to find that and bring that, infuse my practice with that is so special. And I don't think that there's anything better to do or more important than to take, a couple of minutes a day, 1 minute of Kapalabhati, one japa mantra of Om Shanti Om, or just Om, 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 going around 108 times. It's like anybody has time for that. Anybody has time. And to check in with myself first, to observe my internal landscape, so that then I can go into the world with a little bit more information, patience, grace, compassion. There's no better way to spend time. No better way.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It really is an incredible practice to have a sense of self-awareness and also a sense of connecting with a higher source and truly allowing that to be a space that is sacred so that you have that sense of consistency no matter where you are in the world.
Yes.
And I feel it's so important now more than ever for people to have the opportunity to do that, where they're not, looking at their timer on their phone or being distracted by 20 million other things that are going on around us, but really take that time to direct that energy in. So thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank
Truly.
you. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So special.
And I only have a few more questions.
Okay.
But I do want to ask you, how do you define yoga?
I define yoga as God. To me, yoga is connecting to God, connecting to the deeper wisdom of our existence that lives within all sentient beings. Yoga is really the truth of who we are. It's revealing my true essence, to strip back the layers, to be more open, to be more vulnerable, to be more compassionate, to be more loving, to be more connected to the greater world around us and worlds, just really the expansive nature of all things.
Truth be told, the expansive nature of all things is only blossoming with even more potential for us to tap in. And with that being said, I wanted to ask you for, the students out there who are having trouble with consistency or perhaps are feeling a little down on themselves, and who may not have the charisma or the encouragement at home to consistently be on with their practice. What are a few tips that you can give them to stay consistent?
First tip is to choose the night before to meditate in the morning. So that means preparing myself by getting a good night's rest and setting my alarm with enough time so that when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel rushed. And when I do wake up in the morning, I know that I have a plan, and my plan is to meditate. Second thing is to have a dedicated space. And for people who travel, I know a lot of us travel a lot, and this is a big common question that I get. Well, what happens when I don't have my space? I like to walk into whatever room that I'm staying in and decide, okay, this is going to be my spot. This is my meditation spot. This is my altar. I'm going to light the candle there, light the incense there. I wake up in the morning and I've already chosen. Everything is set up for me, so I don't have this moment of like, what should I do? I already have everything planned out. I'm also a Virgo, so I like to plan things. And then the devotional element is so special. I also love a boundary. As we've talked about, paradise is a walled-in garden. This is a definition that is actually the root of the word paradise, and it has a wall around it because it's tended to, it's cared for. It has both shade and water and everything that it needs to flourish. So if I set a timer for myself, or if I use a japa mantra, there's a boundary around this practice which allows for me to feel safe. So I know that even if anxiety does bubble up, or if I feel like, oh my gosh, this is too much, I need to get out of here, I have the knowing and the wisdom that this isn't going to last forever. So I should really attempt to enjoy and relish in the time that I do have to connect with myself. And if people have the opportunity to find somebody that they respect to study with, then I think that that's really the best way, because these practices are originally oral practices passed down from one teacher to the next. And to be able to receive that type of transmission and wisdom and knowledge from one teacher to student is really the most potent way to get teaching. And that doesn't mean that you have to find someone in your neighborhood. Maybe you find someone online that you really resonate with, and their teachings are really powerful. Just yesterday, Talia and I were out eating in Rishikesh, and a woman came up to Talia and said, "I'm your student. I've been practicing with you for years, and I love you so much. And I went to sleep listening to your meditation last night, and it really just overwhelmed me. It brought me to tears because it's so powerful that her teachings were so important to this woman, and they had never met before. So, even if you don't have someone in your neighborhood, now the world has become smaller because we have incredible ways of practicing online that can be really heartfelt and deep as well.
Truth be told, that's the beauty of this absolutely interconnected web that we live in today.
Yeah.
So that inspiration is all around us, and there's always the step if we choose to find the way.
Yeah, definitely.
And with that being said, I wanted to just say thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your heart, and most importantly, sharing how people can get a start into their satsang practice.
Yes.
And for the listeners out there who are looking to get in touch with you, to learn a little bit more about your practice and your offerings, what is the best way that they can do so?
I'm on Instagram, and my Instagram is Tony Lupinacci. It's just my full name. And my website is also tonylupinacci.com. And my email is yoga@tonylupinacci.com. So it's all pretty easy. It's just Tony Lupinacci everywhere. And I'm really willing to chat about any of this stuff. So if anybody has a question, or if you'd like to just send me a message, I'm really happy to respond. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Blessings and namaste.
Namaste.
Truly
so good.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.